Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Eric on the World. I am Eric. It is March 15th, 2021, 4:43 a.m. Coming at you from Bodrum, Turkey, 4:43 a.m. It's a late one, guys. The week, my life has just kind of been that way, doing some creative things. I wanted to know if you wanted to go put popcorn down by the playa. Do you hear how those stop plosives are not so bad? Well, it turns out the answer the whole last year has been right in front of my nose. In fact, right in front of my face. In fact, covering my nose and my face. I just found the world's cheapest pop screen, and it is that I am recording this intro with a motherfucking mask on my face. So that's exciting. I mean, it's hot and it's sweaty and it's not pleasant for all the reasons that we don't like wearing masks. But as long as there's not a guest that I'm having to deal with, I'm fine just wearing this thing, you know? I can't believe that I had not considered using that and that works. So, you know, let me know how it sounds. Does it sound like I'm talking to you through a mask? I don't know. On today's show, we have Karl Wilder, or Karl Wilder. He does have some German roots. But Karl is an American, and I don't know how to describe him because he's done so many things related to food. He has been a chef. He's been a caterer. He's working on a food touring company. I don't know if it's accurate to call him a food historian, but he is certainly a food connoisseur and aficionado. He lives in Berlin. We met in this Facebook group. And so I had a good conversation with him just about German and Berlin food culture, the highs, the lows, and, you know, kind of specifically from the angle of someone who's an American moving there, myself, of course, being new to Germany. And I would say that, you know, Karl is someone who is both highly critical of, but also appreciative of German food and Berlin food culture. And just food in general. And, you know, we get into a lot of like the historical aspects of it. Really interesting stuff. As always, of course, I had internet issues here in Turkey. There was a decent amount of audio that I couldn't use, so I did have to cut some of that out, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it was an interesting conversation that you're going to hear, and it was good. And, you know, so we'll get to that in a little bit. I did a Zoom comedy show tonight. That's the first, you know, again, hey, we're heading into year 2. So, you know, it's time I gave in and started doing the old Zoom comedy. I actually did Sunday Slips, which is a great show. It's the first and last and only show that I've done live in Berlin. I did it the night before Germany went into their lockdown. And now they're doing it on, like, you know, online. So if you want to go to YouTube, you can check that out. That is Sunday Slips or Freudian Slip Club. If you search that, you can see the performance. The internet there was choppy, so you kind of like see little frames of me. And you know what? Doing this podcast has helped that out so much because it lets me just kind of work out my thoughts. And I was able to do that. Like a lot of the problems with the Zoom comedy shows are that people try to do it like it's live comedy where they're waiting for the audience to react. And that just doesn't really work in a Zoom context. And in this specific context, the program that we were using, you literally can't hear anybody else laugh. So, you know, stopping for pauses in that way doesn't really work. I felt like it was best to just come in high energy and kind of plow through it and let people do with it what they will. So if you like the intros to this podcast, you will love that Zoom comedy show I did. Again, it's Sunday Slips if you search for that. Yeah, so I said today's March 15th. March 11th, that was the official anniversary, as I understand it, of the World Health Organization declaring that we were in a global pandemic. What a year it has been, huh? Man, oh man. It is crazy to me. I've been posting so much on Instagram looking back at like the memories. I mean, I was in Ecuador when this virus hit, and it's so crazy. One, I just have very fond memories of that trip. It was very cool. I met some Germans that helped inspire me to move to Germany. But to see the lead up to what was going to be the next 12 months and just how no one had any idea, and it's just such a trip to look back at those photos and videos and be like, damn, man, like I had no idea what was coming. And it was even crazier being in Ecuador because, obviously things started in China and then it kind of became an Italy thing and it's kind of a Spain thing. And then, but even by the time the 11th came around, it didn't feel like, at least as far as, any of my friends told me, it didn't feel like a New York thing. It was like, okay, I'm getting, some texts. I'm seeing some posts that people aren't going to be going into work and maybe they're going to shut down Broadway and stuff. But this all seemed like, like precautions. And as far as Ecuador was concerned, they only had 17 confirmed cases. Now, obviously the numbers were higher, but whatever, that was the information they had to work with at the time. So I'm traveling around and like, we have no idea. So even though it was declared on the 11th, bars were still open, hostels were still open. I believe that very night I was going out karaokeing. I think, God, it's just so insane. And it took probably another 4 or 5 days, which doesn't sound that long, but really before like we started to feel it in Ecuador, where it's like, okay, the clubs are going to close a little bit early, but they'll probably be open tomorrow, or maybe they'll be open on the weekend or whatever. And even then, we were like out partying in the street. There was no notion about wearing masks whatsoever. It was like, make sure you wash your hands, which, yes, of course, but we were dancing in the street. I mean, we were making out with some people, and just like, and it honestly probably was safe. Like we were at that point, we were in Montanita, which is just like a few thousand people on the coast of Ecuador. But, obviously as time progressed, things changed. And man, I have lived in that 12-month span. I ended up staying in Ecuador for 3.5 months because it just didn't make sense. By the time it kind of logistically became possible perhaps to go back to New York, then New York was the epicenter. I didn't, have a job or like great health care. I had Medicaid to come back to. Ecuador honestly seems safer and just like a better place to be in lockdown. And that ended up being true. But why was I telling you that? Oh yeah, I ended up spending 3.5 months there. Then and eventually flew back to Texas, drove up to New York to kind of let things get better in New York. And literally it was like I was so lucky at dodging Corona these last 12 months. I went through Guayaquil, which ultimately became the epicenter in South America for a little bit, in Ecuador on a bus transfer. Almost stayed the night there, decided not to continue on my bus ride. I could have gotten it there. I didn't get it in Quito. I didn't get it in Ecuador. Go back to the States, drive up. It's not really in the South. And then by the time I get to New York is better, but then it starts hitting the South. And then, okay, I'm going to move to Germany, but we get banned. So I can't move to Germany. So I moved to Albania. But then I get into grad school in Germany. So just kidding. Now I am going to Germany. And then I go to Germany. And then my housing falls through in Germany. And okay, I guess I'm going to Turkey. So it's like, dude, like I said, last 12 months, I think 11 plus states, Ecuador, the United States, Albania, Germany, Turkey. It's just been so absolutely insane. I wanted to write about it. Well, actually, I wanted to do a podcast about it, and not this podcast. I'd actually done all these interviews. I was really excited and really had this vision in mind of setting the stage for what it was like to be quarantined in an international hostel in a country other than your own as a foreigner in Ecuador. I had all these interviews I was so excited about. And the thing is, I was waiting for the story to kind of end. Like, okay, pandemic's over. Or, hey, I'm back in the United States now. Life is settled, and now let me tell this story. And the reality is that point never really came, right? We're still in this, and it's still not settled. And I started over the summer to okay, I'm going to put it together, and I guess I'll just put it out a bunch of different episodes. And I had something over 10 hours worth of audio recorded. And it wasn't this kind of thing where it's like pretty free form. It was like, I need to script this, put it together, edit it, really tell this compelling story, which I can totally do and I've done in the past. But it was honestly just so overwhelming with still being in the uncertainty of life to then go back on, like, at that point in time, like the last like 4 or 5 months, and then document that uncertainty. So all that said, I ended up writing something about it. I put out part 1. I want to end up doing multiple parts to sooner rather than later catch up to where I'm at in life in terms of this last year. But I wrote something. It's called what is it called? A Year in Corona? Corona in a Year? God dang it. This is what happened. You know, I got so many tabs open, and hold on. 1 year of Corona, parenthetical, part 1. colon, the beginning. So it's called 1 Year of Corona, and this piece, part 1, is called The Beginning. You can find that on ericontheworld.com. That is the website. I would love it if you read it. Like, I think it just gives, it's not like necessarily my best writing, because a lot of it is just like, then this happened, then that happened, then this happened. But I do feel along with like the video and images I have, it does a decent job of kind of capturing that turn, you know, from, hey, we're all dancing in the street, to like, oh shit, we're taking a 3 a.m. taxi ride and ran over a cat that we killed because we're trying to get to Quito from Canoa, 7 hours in the dark. Like, you know, it's just been insane. So I would love it if you guys check that out. But, you know, we're still here. So the ones that have survived, thank God. I hope wherever you are that the vaccine deployment's going like all right. It's so bad in Germany. There's not, like, I was going to go back like April 1st or May 1st, and I think I have to for my residency permit be in Germany like 6 out of 12 months. But there's so little incentive to go back to Germany at this specific moment. But I do want to get back there. But for now, I'm in Turkey. So we'll see. Anyway, I hope that this year has been able to find, like, you've been able to find some moments of joy in it. It has been just an insane ride, and the ride's not over, you know? Yeah. But I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're listening. And let's get to this conversation with Karl. And I'll talk to you on the back end. Okay, until then, please enjoy this conversation about food culture within Germany and Berlin with Karl Wilder.
Cities around the world, I can tell you what they eat, why they eat it, and how it intertwines with the history of their town.
Wow. So, and I'm sorry, where were you originally when you spoke about your mother's cooking? Where were you born originally? Where'd you grow up?
Well, my mother was married to a man in the Navy for several years, so I grew up all over the U.S. I think that was in New Orleans, or it may have been in Minneapolis. Those are the two cities where we spent the most time. And New Orleans is my heritage place. But, yeah, we just kept moving. He got transferred, we go to another city. He got transferred, we go to another city. We lived in Omaha. We lived in Arlington, Virginia, Bethesda, Maryland. I can't even name all the places because it seems every couple of years that the movers were coming, packing us up and sending us somewhere else.
Do you feel like that helped inform your knowledge of all those various food cultures around the States?
Yes.
Yeah.
Without question. Because every culture has something.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you mentioned the cream of mushroom thing, I do not come from a family that is good at cooking, and that was a staple in our household. But I'm from the Bay Area, and I think of canned casserole kind of things as like a Midwestern thing, but apparently that's kind of ubiquitous in the U.S., you know?
Yeah. I finished my school in the Bay Area. I love San Francisco.
Okay, cool.
It's changed. It's now Techie City.
Yes, it has. It has changed a lot. So, okay. But, you know, we met through this Americans in Berlin Facebook group. I had just moved in October to Germany, and things as they are, I'm now in Turkey, hoping to come back. But what was your journey to eventually wind up in Berlin?
Well, yeah, it's a tough one. Someone very close to me died, and I just couldn't take my life in the United States anymore. So I shut it all down. I closed the restaurant. I closed the New York apartment. I picked up 2 cats, 2 suitcases. I gave everything I owned to the poor. Literally, I went to a homeless shelter and to another place called Housing Works for auction, the Victrolas and things like that. With 2 cats and 2 suitcases, I came to Berlin. I needed to start a new life. I needed to have a different life. And I needed to not pay taxes to support endless war.
Yeah, I understand that. And what had put Berlin particularly on the map for you?
It is where part of my family is from historically. And I have some very dear people here that I wanted to connect more deeply with. And it made sense. I came out and visited with Kristen for a couple of weeks in February and then moved in March. I was done with the United States. And so I came to Berlin. She said, don't fill out any paperwork ahead of time. Show up at the Auslander office and make them deal with you. So that's how I did it. I said, I'm not going back. How about a 5-year visa to get started? And that's what I did.
Okay, cool. And I'm sorry, who is Kristen?
Kristen is a dear friend of mine. I call her my cousin, but we're not actually related. But we might be. We might be. I have found 2 of my cousins here. So
wow, yeah. So both from I'll say a culinary perspective as well as to a large extent a German perspective. I'm coming in with a lot of ignorance to this conversation. So
that's right.
All right. So I visited Berlin about 2.5 years ago, and then as I said, I actually moved there in October. And I will, if I'm being totally forthright, in my experience so far, I'm not the biggest fan of the German cuisine.
Horrible.
I know that there's a lot more to be had and exposed to, but I'm somewhat, I come from California. I love my Mexican food. I love spice. I love like an international kind of palate. Indian food is great for me, all that kind of stuff. Wow. And my impression of German food is it leans much more on like kind of the, maybe I'll say creamy side, not a lot of hot, spicy things. Is that an accurate assessment in your opinion?
It's an accurate assessment, but it comes from a place of scarcity. It comes from 2 world wars. And what did they have? They had care packages from the U.S. They had salt. They had pepper if they were lucky. And the cuisine that we eat in Berlin, different than München, which is its own Bavarian thing, came from that place of scarcity. The currywurst is a great example. After the war, the sausages, there was very little meat, and they were made mostly from barley. So they had no flavor. But the Americans had ketchup, and it was, the occupations were a real thing. And the Brits had curry powder. And so by putting ketchup and curry powder on this sausage that had no flavor, they were able to mask it and to make it into something that they could be proud of presenting. I think it is one of the worst dishes ever invented, but I understand from where it came. It came from, we've got nothing. We don't have seasonings. We have salt, we have shitty sausage, we have ketchup, and we have curry powder, and we traded to get those. So it came from a very genuine place of being creative with nothing. And the German people had faced nothing 2 times and for a long period of time. And then the wall went up and there was a different kind of nothing on the east than there was on the west. So the cuisine developed from, we don't have much. What are we going to make?
Yeah. It's funny, when I visited a couple of years ago, some of the locals I met definitely held up the currywurst is like this crown jewel of Berlin, and I thought it was going to be like a sausage infused with curry, and it was really just like a hot dog in like a ketchup and curry sauce, and I thought it was very bad, to be honest with you.
The currywurst is one of the worst things about Berlin, but I understand why they're proud of it, because they're proud of taking nothing and making it something.
Another thing I had noticed is that whereas in the States you do see beef, it's pretty much everywhere. Here, pork tends to be the thing. that's everywhere. And I'm not, I mean, I like bacon, but I'm not like the biggest ham guy or anything like that. And can you touch a little bit upon how that situation came to be?
After World War II, they had to get the farms up and running again because, you know, the country had been bombed. And it was fast to get chicken, duck, goose, and pork to market. And they became the meats of Germany and the meats of Berlin as a result. Bavaria was still raising a certain amount of beef. In fact, Bavarian beef is often sent to France because it's some of the best on earth, but not enough to supply Berliners, not by a long shot. So most of the meat that we get when it comes to beef comes from either the USA. You'll see that marked on the Trader Joe's steaks. I mean, the Aldi steaks here, Trader Joe's in the US. And if you go to Metro, you can get whole cuts of meat. One of the things that I have done for neighbors is they buy whole cuts at Metro and I butcher them. I turn them into steaks, I grind up the scraps, and they pay me in meat. So I have 17 sirloin steaks in my freezer as a result of cutting things up for neighbors.
Nice, nice. When you talk about having to kind of butcher those things, you know, if you were a restaurateur, you wanted to start your own business here, I've seen some posts in the group about this as well, that just even the supply for, you know, even if you wanted to make the most amazing dish, you might not have access in terms of a supply chain to those ingredients. How do you do that? How does one make that work in Berlin?
It's going to be a real challenge. You're going to be running out of things. The supply of most things is not consistent. If you go to a grocery store on one day, you'll see these cuts of meat. If you go the next week on the same day, you'll see different cuts. It's the same with absolutely everything. You know, baking, double-acting baking powder, which can be had at the Asian stores, can be had when they bring it in. If you don't buy it when they bring it in, it might be 2 months before it returns. So we do not have a consistent supply of much of anything but carrots, potatoes, and cabbage.
Right. Yeah. Kartoffel salad.
Sure.
I just had my first Christmas. I didn't go back to the States. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. But I was able to go to a German friend's place for Christmas. And I guess I had these fantastical visions of a Christmas dinner. Okay. And same for England. I've actually never been to England. But, you know, like a duck or like a goose or something like that. And very elaborate. And it was actually quite the opposite. Like it was potato salad and sausage for dinner. Was
it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day?
Yeah, it was Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Eve.
Okay. That is the traditional Christmas Eve meal.
Yeah.
Christmas
Okay.
Day, a duck or a goose might have been served when you were not there.
Okay, that's possible. Yeah. Because it's funny. To me, that's like from in the States, that would just be like a simple, you know, barbecue cookout thing to have, is some potato salad and a sausage, you know, to have it a dozen times over the summer.
Here, it's a celebratory meal. And again, that comes from the culture of scarcity, not having. And so you save your money to buy 3 kinds of sausage for Christmas Eve. That is a post-war tradition that has continued. It's the same thing. I don't know if you got this in the U.S. My mother is German. We got oranges in our stockings. And that comes from Germany because they brought in oranges once a year at Christmas time. In the East, they would hand them out. Each citizen got 1 orange. And in the West, they were available in the stores because they're not a local thing. So oranges were very scarce and very precious. So it became a Christmas gift.
No, we didn't have that. We had sugar cereal was our treat. Like,
okay.
Yeah, like, you know, Lucky Charms, whatever. Before moving to Berlin, I did spend a few weeks in Schönewalde, which is like a very small. Yeah. Okay. Another thing I noticed, again, just culturally different than the States, they tended to have a hot meal for lunch and a small cold meal, usually bread, just almost like crappy sandwich bread, and, you know, salami slices and maybe some tomatoes or something for dinner. And I am so attuned to having like a big hot meal for dinner to kind of cap off the day. And I had read somewhere that was also kind of steeped in tradition in terms of farmers and so forth, and having to schedule out their meals through the day.
It's also written into the language. Morgenbrot, you know, morning bread, and evening brot, Abendbrot, evening bread. So it's written into the language. It is very normal to have bread, cheese, bread, salami, bread, salad for a German dinner and to have a big meal at noon. And it was because of the farmers. The farmers would get up before the sun rose and they would have bread and cheese or whatever in the kitchen, coffee, and then run out and do their work, have a big meal at noon, work in the afternoon, and then have a light repast. There are people who do that to this day. They could afford to have a nice pasta or a roast chicken, but they don't because it's not the way they were raised, so it's not what they do.
Right. I love bread. I do. However, I did not love the bread that I was exposed to in Schönewalde. Again, it was almost like Wonder Bread, like just white sandwich bread.
Yeah. We've all had it.
Where, you know, if I'm in France, I could eat bread and some brie cheese all day long and be perfectly happy. I hear about Germans talking about a bread culture, but does that just mean that it's everywhere, or is there an appreciation for, I don't know, fancier quality breads?
Not fancier, but more wholesome. So the big deal, certainly in my neighborhood, is to get rye bread. And the rye bread is a 72-hour ferment, a 72-hour rise. It takes forever to make. It's €5 a loaf. People will line up for it from this bakery on Boxengerplatz. They also make great baguettes, by the way. And I finally succumbed, got in the line, waited, got my turn, paid €5 for a loaf of bread. And I have to say, I get what the excitement's about. I could eat this rye bread plain, no butter, no cheese, no meat. It is that good. So there is an appreciation for fine breads, but there's also an appreciation for all breads. If you look at the kebab, that shitty white bread that they made in place of the pita is also appreciated. They appreciate bread. And I think it's, again, a culture of scarcity. You need those carbohydrates. You need those calories. And a lot of young Germans who come to Berlin from other places live on a kebab a day or a currywurst and frites a day, and that is their primary source of nutrition. So they want as many calories as they can get in that meal.
Yeah. You mentioned people coming to Berlin. Neukölln is my neighborhood. And I mean, yeah, you have like a dinner place on every block, if not 2 or 3, as well as Kreuzberg, and they refer to that as Little Istanbul. Is that correct? Yeah. Right. Do you know anything about the, and I bring this up because I've had several dinners here in Turkey, and I got to be honest, they were half as good as the ones that I had in Berlin. The ones I had in Berlin were phenomenal. And there's been some debate I've heard between Turks here versus Turks there about where it originated, but I thought it was originated in Berlin.
Well, yes and no. It as we know it today, it originated in Berlin. The Turks came up as part of the rebuilding effort, and so they were made German citizens, and Istanbul is still a sister city to Berlin. They were considered very valuable members of society. And the way they were cooking meat was with an old-fashioned spit. So they would maybe stuff meat into a pita with some pickled onions, done over this spit. Well, German engineers got involved and created the electric kebab or gas flame kebab roaster that rotates that we now know. And that became a big deal, and the Germans got involved into turning it into a meal. So that's when the beets and the onions and the salad and the yogurt sauce and the other sauces were added to turn it into what I think is a pretty phenomenal sandwich and a meal that will last me 2 days. I mean, it's like eating a San Francisco burrito. It's that much food. And so it's really a pairing of the best of German ingenuity and Turkish cuisine. So it's a marriage between the two. It isn't one or the other, it's both.
Right. Can you explain to me, you know, the spit that you see going around, as delicious as it, you know, that aside, what is physically, how is that composed? Is it slabs of meat or slices of meat on top of one another?
It depends on where you go. If you go to a good place, they have marinated the meat or the chicken, and they're placing it and trimming it and making it look beautiful. To a typical shop, they get a frozen cone of meat wrapped in plastic, shove it on the spit, and start it running before the drunks are woken up from their hangovers, in the hopes that you won't notice that it was something swept off the butcher floor.
I see. Yeah, the ones that I've had in Turkey don't have just as you, it's exactly as you said. They don't have, I guess, these German ingredients. They don't have the yogurt sauce. They don't have a lot of the vegetables, and they tend to be a lot drier. I mean, there's a place on Sonnenallee in like Geigerstrasse, and it's amazing. It's just so juicy, you know. I haven't found that here in Turkey.
Are you on the Asia side or the European side?
I am like southwest. I'm in Bodrum. I don't know where exactly that.
I know where Bodrum.
Okay. Yeah.
I will send you the location of the best one in Turkey, where they have their own farms. They raise their own lamb and beef. They marinate the meat, alternate the lamb and beef, and they wrap it with pickled onions.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
It's on the Asian side, so you have to take the ferry over from Bodrum.
Sure.
But it's really good. Yeah, Istanbul is one of my cities. I know the best everything there.
Yeah. How much, you know, when I never really appreciated the food of the U.S. I've lived in San Francisco, Chicago, New York. I never really appreciated it till I left. And it's not that there's bad food in other places, but you don't get that variety. I mean, the U.S. really is a melting pot where, I've had some of the best Asian I've ever had was in San Francisco, obviously New York, and Italian and so forth. What cultures? We have Turkey. I know you'd mentioned to me Vietnamese food. Are those the two main outside cultural food influences you see in Germany?
Well, there's a few. Italian food, of course, is everyone's favorite in Germany. Germans eat more Italian food than they do German food for obvious reasons. But the Italians didn't really come here until after the fall of the wall. They came for the cheap real estate, which is why there's so many pizza places on the east side of Berlin. They just kind of happened organically. Pizza's the cheapest thing to make and sell. They could rent a space. They're going to make pizza. But so we have a big Italian, more in the east than in the west. And we also have a good Thai population. The Vietnamese were invited to come to the east when the U.S. was basically murdering the hell out of them. And they were communist. And so the Soviets said, come. And at the same time, a number of Thai people snuck in, pretending to be Vietnamese, knowing that the Soviets couldn't tell the difference. Absolutely right, which is how we got our Thai population. But the cuisine of the Vietnamese and Thai are stuck in that era. So they haven't been back to their countries and seen how food has evolved. They're still making what they made for the Germans back then, which is why everything is in a gravy or sauce, and it's yellow curry and red curry. It's very limited because they were very limited in what they could get as far as ingredients at the time. So that became the cuisine, and they haven't branched beyond that. The ones that are making it interesting again are the vegan restaurants, because they have to. They can't do that. They can't rely on the chicken curry red, chicken curry green. They have to do something interesting. And there's a place called 1900, vegan restaurant not far from me, that makes the best Vietnamese food you will have in Berlin.
Okay, awesome. Shopping. Do you speak German?
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch.
Okay. Just a quick anecdote. When I'm just learning the basics of German. But I went in shopping at like the Rewe or whatever, and I went and I texted my roommates. I said I want to make sure I don't get things with added sugar or and I did. And they said, don't worry, and they're German. They are German, but they speak perfect English. And they're like, don't worry, it's totally fine. You're not going to screw this up. Of course, I come home and I bought the thing, not only with sugar, but with extra sugar. Not only the different items, but just the distribution in the store, and then obviously not being able to read the language. Shopping has also been a bit of a struggle for me. I mean, do you have any advice, or particularly from an American perspective, about what to expect and how to go about your grocery shopping?
It's a challenge. I knew the word Zucker, so I knew to avoid Zucker because I can't have it. It's something I just can't eat. But it is a big challenge. I suggest that everyone get a translation app on their phone and a magnifier, and they translate and magnify the labels so they know what's in the food. Germany is not as bad as the US when it comes to added sugar, but there's still far too much. And it's in things that you would never expect it to be in.
Yeah. We're in a worldwide pandemic. So many businesses have been struggling. Here in Bodrum, as well as I was in Albania for a bit a while ago, there's lots of outdoor seating, al fresco stuff. And so outdoor dining isn't a challenge. In a lot of places I've been to in Berlin, that's not so much the case. I know New York accommodated just taking up parking spaces, putting tables out there. How do you see do you think things are going to just totally go back to normal, or do you see this kind of having an infrastructural impact on dining in Germany and Berlin?
I think it's going to be gradual. And that's partly because, to be honest, Germany has really screwed up with the vaccine. They're throwing them all away because they defrost them. The people don't show up. They throw them in the garbage because their bureaucracy is too rigid to allow someone else to have it. That has to change. If that changes, I think by June 1st, we'll be back to normal. I think most of Europe will be back to normal by June 1st.
Do you see, in the same way, though, that this has opened up opportunities, I'll say, for digital workers to, be remote and not have to go into the office? Do you see this having any kind of an impact like that? Like, I know New York has said, at least this coming year, that it's going to be the outdoor dining will be a permanent fixture or come back at least for this year, which I was there when that was going on, and I actually thought that was really nice. Or can Berlin do something like that, or is it just Germany too rigid with their bureaucracy?
Well, they're pretty rigid with their bureaucracy, but they have made amendments for the restaurants. So they have got an outdoor dining plan. I've forgotten the rollout. It's sometime this March where they're going to allow much more of that.
Okay.
So they're very rigid, but they're learning to be less rigid. I mean, maybe someday Angela Merkel will change her hairstyle. Maybe. That hair has not moved in 16 years, but I predict the day when there will be a breeze and we'll see a tendril actually emerge.
Yes. Have you contemplated starting your own restaurant in Berlin?
No, I don't want to do a restaurant again, especially in Berlin, because not enough people appreciate good food here. They don't. They're happy to eat something big. It has a lot of calories. It's tasty enough. And if you look at the restaurant business here, they don't hire chefs. They hire what they call chefs for minimum wage or close to it, who make the same thing they made at the last restaurant they were at, salami sandwiches and quiche and maybe some coffee. And restaurant owners don't care to change that. Very few great restaurants here. There's one called Katz's Orange, which is owned by a chef from San Francisco. Have you been there?
No, actually, I haven't heard of it.
Oh, wow, you got to go.
What type of food is it?
It is, well, they do something they call meat candy. Slow-cooked, slow-braised meats that just melt in your mouth. They fry their French fries in goose fat. They make some of the best salads you've ever had. And, of course, their specials are always changing because the supplies are always changing. But if you're lucky enough, you might get pigtails one night or something really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Something. It sounds like I'm kind of coming down hard on the German food, but this is my first time properly living in another country. I sold all my stuff, and you don't. It's like you don't want to be the guy who comes into someone else's country and then criticizes it. You realize that you are a guest in their country, but. I just want to make sure I'm not crazy about the food situation and your commentary on there not being great restaurants and things like that. because I've had so many Germans recommend, like, oh, you got to try this place or that place. And I would go there and I'd be like, this is, I've had far better, you know, a number of times in a number of other places. And it's just really surprising to me, that German perspective on that.
Well, if you don't know what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
No, it is. What I've learned about Germany is that the food is not great if you go out, but the ingredients are great because there's more care put into the farming, and there's more care put into even the animal farming. So if you cook, which fortunately I do, you can get some of the best ingredients here, and you can make superb meals. You just have to be flexible. If this isn't available, this is available. If this is gone, then you get this. The Asian stores are great for the Brits and the Americans because they'll have things like Worcestershire sauce from Lee and Perrins, which everybody wants. They'll have the Marmite. They'll have baking soda. They'll have baking powder. They'll have 00 flour from Italy if you want to make pizza. So the Asian stores have been a godsend for many Americans who are frustrated with the German grocery stores. You can't get canned pumpkin, or at least you couldn't until this past year. Enough people had asked for it that Reva made a deal with, I think, Libby, and brought in canned pumpkin for the first time from Thanksgiving through Christmas. Never happened before. So if you're persistent and you ask for things, they will give them to you if enough people ask. When I first moved to Berlin, I went into a Fleischerei and I asked if I could get chicken wings. And he said, no, what would we do with the rest of the chicken?
Right.
Now, if I go to Reva or I go even to Aldi, there will be chicken wings in a packet, usually 6. Kaufland has them all the time. So if you just keep asking for what you want, Tabasco sauce made its debut at Revy. They brought in Tabasco sauce from Louisiana for the first time ever. So it was in because people wanted it.
Right, right. When I was in Schönewalde, the host was making this food, and I could smell it from the kitchen, and I was thought, God, I really hope that we're not going to eat this, because I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. It smelled like dog food. Like, it smelled like steamed dog. So we sit down at the table, and he of course we are eating it, and it looks like this chunky, I mean, it looks like dog food too, this chunky brown stuff, and he says, you know, okay, go ahead and eat this. And he said, I'll, you know, eat it first and then I'll tell you what it is. And I thought, oh God. And I will try anything. I'm not averse to trying some weird thing, but I wasn't looking forward to it. Tried it, wasn't good, but I wanted to be polite. So I finished the whole plate, and he was like, schmeckt gut? And I was like, ja, schmeckt gut. And then he was like,
was ist das?
Yeah. And he was like, ja, das ist die Lunge. And it was cow lung that I was eating. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
But,
yeah, it smells like a barnyard, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you seasoned it. The thing is, he was actually a great chef. He, you know, all the stories I've said about this place aside, when he wanted to cook, he could, which made this a little bit even more surprising. But yeah, I do respect the fact that you're using every part. You know, that you're not tossing out. But that doesn't mean that it necessarily is going to taste fantastic.
That is true. And while we use every part, there are some parts you can't get here. Try to get a pig cheek if you want to make guanciale. They send them all to Italy.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So they're all exported. That's why if you go to Real in the Ring Center, you will see the pig's heads with the cheeks missing.
Okay. Okay. This seems to be kind of the golden question that I see come up in that group all the time. But what is Berlin's relationship with Mexican food, and where would you say someone can get some decent Mexican food in Berlin?
I say learn how to make it.
Fair enough.
Really, there is no other solution. There is now a store on Boxhanger Platz that carries some great Mexican products, and they make beautiful corn tortillas, but their tacos are stewed meat, not very good. Their tamales are nice, but I buy ingredients there. I don't buy their food, and I love them. They're wonderful people, but most of the Mexican food here is made by people from other countries, and if you give a German Mexican food, they will throw corn salad and Hershey's chocolate sauce in a burrito and call it beef mole.
Right. Yeah. Well, and if you did do it properly, I don't know, just per the palate of Germans we've discussed, if it would even be appealing to them, if it really had some kick to it.
It depends. I think there are more young Germans who have traveled a lot and tasted enough that they would be very open to it. If you had tried it 5 or 10 years ago, I don't think so. But now I think you could probably do it properly.
Yeah. Are there any other topics or anything that you want to discuss or things you want to touch on?
Well, just the favorite. I love to do food research, and I read old cookbooks and old documents and everything else. And Italians don't own the dish fettuccine Alfredo. They give that to the Americans. They don't want anything to do with it. But I found the oldest written reference, the oldest written recipe for the fettuccine Alfredo, and Wikipedia is the worst source of food history, I have to tell you. It's always bullshit. But the earliest written record for fettuccine Alfredo comes from Essex, England in 1769. So we have to blame the Brits for that library paste glop that they put on pasta. It's not the fault of the Americans. It is certainly not the fault of the Italians. It's the British people.
Duly noted. Duly noted. Well, Karl, do you have anything you want to promote or a place where people can find you if they want to, or just stay in touch with your catering business? I mean, your future.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing catering. But if anyone is interested in food tourism and wants to talk to me about what's coming up, I'm working with I'm actually working with several travel startups to try to raise funds. So, angel investors, give me a call. They can reach me at wilderkj@gmail.com. And I will answer any question. And if you're in Berlin and you're stuck and you can't find a wanted ingredient, send me an email. I'm happy to tell you where you can find it, because I have compiled shopping resources. I know every store within about 10 miles walking distance from my house, what they have, when they have it, and when you can expect to get constant comment tea again.
Awesome. Karl, that's fantastic. And just before we go, so where do you see your future in terms of, are you here to stay, you think, in Berlin? Yeah, I am, because I'm over 40 and I invested in the pension here. Okay. When I retire, I will go to the south of Italy, the south of France, or the south of Spain, but I cannot imagine ever retiring. I wake up without coffee and I have more energy than I do now. So retirement, I don't think is an option for me. Yeah. Well, good. Good. I mean, that's it. Yeah. Well, Karl, again, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Lots of useful information. All right. All right. Karl, thank you so much. All right. That is the episode, guys. Oh, shit. I didn't put my mask back on. Hold on. Wait. Let's hear if we can hear the difference. Go pop some popcorn down by the pretty pub, please. Now, let me get my mask on. Go pop some popcorn, please, down by the pretty pub. Pleasantly, would you, Peter? I don't know. Yeah, it's better, yeah? Thanks to Karl Wilder. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Do go to ericontheworld.com and check out my little essay and my little piece about the last year. I'm going to be releasing future ones, but this is the first in a series of them. I would appreciate it. Follow me at ericontheworld on Instagram. And I hope you're enjoying these little music selections. You know, they're done with intent, and sometimes they end up taking a good 45 minutes for me to find something. It's currently 5:25 a.m. now. Oh, God, and then I got to edit this and post it. Good Lord, I'm getting no sleep. But anyway, yeah. I listen to the lyrics on this guy, right? This ends up being apropos. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week, no matter where you are in the world, be well and be loved. Have you ever went over a friend's house to eat and the food just ain't no good? I mean, the macaroni soggy, the peas all mushed, and the chicken tastes like wood. So you try to play it off like you think you can by saying that you're full. And then your friend says, Mama, he just being polite. He ain't finished. Oh, that's full. So your heart starts pumping and you think of a lie and you say that you already ate. And your friend says, man, there's plenty of food, so you pile some more on your plate. But while the sticky food's steaming, your mind starts to dream of the moment it's time to leave. And then you look at your plate and your chicken slowly rotting into something that looks like cheese.
Oh, so you say, that's it, I got to leave this place. I don't care what these people think. I'm just sitting here making myself nauseous with this ugly food that stinks. Oh, so you bust out the door while it's still closed, still sick from the food you ate. And then you run to the store for quick relief from a bottle of KO Pectate. And then you call your friend 2 weeks later to see how he has been. And he says, I understand about the food, babe, but we're still friends. With a hip hop, the hippie to the hip of the hip, hip, a hopper, you don't stop the rocker to the bang, bang. Boogie say up, jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogity beat. I said, Hank, can you rock? Can you rock to the rhythm that just don't stop? Or can you hip me to the shoe-be-doo? I said, come on, make the people.